The gate hall is a ruin. 6 bodies of Team Asura 3 are scattered across broken stone, and I'm the 7th, flat on my back, staring at a status window that says HP 1%. Level up, level up, level up. The notifications stack on top of each other, 47 lines deep, faster than I can read them. Passive skill, endurance has mutated right arrow body on the brink. Passive skill, perception has mutated right arrow predator's eye. Nobody else can see this text. Nobody else is alive to see anything. Above me, the thing the association classified as an E-rank sentinel raises one massive claw. It isn't an E-rank anything. It isn't even close. I have no skill left that can stop it, no weapon that isn't already buried in something else's chest, and exactly one thought in my head: I am not doing this again. I plant a hand in the blood on the floor and push myself up. The claw comes down. 2 days earlier. You. Water. I don't have a name to Chu Yingren. 3 years on this team and I'm you, or sometimes Hey, or on her better days, kid. She's 26, S rank, and her face is on recruitment posters in 4 cities. I hand her the canteen without a word. Not that one, she says. That's yours. I have 2 canteens. I switch them. Bai Shuya doesn't look up from the enchantment she's carving into her staff. She's the only one who's ever asked my name, and that was once, a year ago, and she forgot the answer within the hour. I don't hold it against her. Nobody remembers the name of a bag. I carry the bags. I carry the tents, the ration crates, the spare blades. Nobody wants to sharpen themselves. I clean the gear after every clear, scrubbing monster ichor out of boots that cost more than my rent. 5 years since I awakened. 5 years since the system looked inside me and handed me the lowest rank that exists. F rank isn't weak fighter. F rank means no combat skill triggered at all. It means the association doesn't count you as a real awakened, just someone standing near one when the light came down. Guilds don't reject F ranks outright. Someone has to carry the bags. They just don't pay them like people. I write everything down anyway, not because anyone asked. Every gate I've walked into, every monster pattern, every mistake a teammate made and covered up, every crack in a plan that worked out fine this time and might not next time, it goes in a notebook nobody's ever opened but me. It has never once been useful. I keep doing it because it's the only thing about this job that's actually mine. Contracts in, says one of the younger fighters, Tang Wei, dropping a data slate on the crate I'm sitting on like I'm a table. Low E rank. Captain's not even coming, just us 4 and the pack mule. Nobody laughs at pack mule except him. I've heard worse. Chu Yingren. I keep her name wrong on purpose in my head. It's the only rebellion I get. Glances at the slate for 2 seconds. E-rank clear for training. Association graded it this morning. She tosses it back. Good. Something easy for once. I write down the gate's coordinates before we leave. Old habit. The road to the gate cuts through scrubland, and 20 minutes out, 3 broken rank wolves burst from the tree line. A minor rift bleed, not uncommon this close to an active gate. Bai Shuya's fire arcs overhead before I've even registered the growl. Tang Wei's blade opens one wolf's shoulder to hip. The third comes in low and fast toward the flank where I'm standing. I don't fight it. I've never fought anything. I grab the strap of a fallen teammate, not fallen, just knocked sideways by a wolf that clipped her, and haul her back 3 steps while claws rake the dirt where she'd been. Thanks, she breathes. I nod. That's the extent of my contribution. Around me, 3 people who trained for years cut down 3 monsters in under a minute, clean and fast, blood arcing bright against gray scrub grass. I pick up a dropped dagger from the dead wolf's territory marker, loot, technically mine to log, and slide it into an inventory bag while the others catch their breath. This is what I do. I watch, I carry, I survive by proximity. The gate itself looks like a tear in wet paper, glowing faint blue against the afternoon sky. We step through together, 5 bodies, 1 purpose, in and out by dusk. Inside, low scrub, cracked earth, the particular stillness of a world that hasn't decided if it's hostile yet. The association's report says E-rank fauna, minor structural instability, estimated clear time 90 minutes. The first 20 minutes go exactly like the report promised. 2 burrowing lizards dispatched without effort. A collapsed tunnel Tang Wei clears with 1 controlled blast. Chu Yingren doesn't even draw her main weapon. Then Bai Shuya stops walking. There's a structure ahead, she says. Not on the survey. We come over a low ridge and there it is. An altar, black stone, half sunk into the cracked ground, covered in a script none of us recognize. It isn't in the pre-clear report. It isn't in any report because I checked every line of that slate before we left, out of habit, and there was nothing about a structure. Scanner's reading it as inert, Tang Wei says, tapping his wrist display. Chu Yinggren's jaw sets. Association missed a structure this size? I already know the answer isn't going to be comforting, because I've read enough of these reports to know that gate surveys don't miss altars the size of a house. Someone wrote this classification. Someone signed off on E-rank routine. I don't say any of this out loud. Nobody asks the bag carrier for his opinion on survey integrity. Bai Shuya steps closer to the stone, staff raised, reading the script under her breath. The altar's light doesn't flicker on slowly. It detonates, one white pulse that throws all four of them back and knocks me flat where I'm standing 20 feet behind. Dust and cracked earth rain down. When I lift my head, the black stone is glowing open like a second, smaller gate had been folded inside the first one all along. Something is standing where the altar used to be. It's tall enough that I have to tilt my head back to see all of it, built out of matte void black plating that doesn't catch the light right, 4 limbs, too many joints, no visible face. Just a horizontal seam where a mouth should be, already opening. Chu Yinggren is on one knee, weapon half raised, blood running from a cut above her eyebrow. She looks up at the thing with the calm, assessing stare of someone who has fought S-rank monsters and lived. E-rank, she says, and there's the first real crack of doubt I've ever heard in her voice. This isn't E-rank. 3 miles away in a data center that doesn't officially exist under that name, a man in a gray association uniform closes a terminal window on a classification file he signed 48 hours ago. He doesn't check the gate's live status. He has already been paid not to. The thing in the ruined altar light doesn't wait for anyone to finish deciding what it is. It moves. I've never seen anything move like that, not fast in the way Tang Wei is fast, cutting a clean line from one point to another. It's fast in the way a held breath breaks all at once, no warning between stillness and violence. One limb comes down where Bai Shuya is standing. She isn't standing there anymore. Chu Yinggren has already thrown herself sideways into her, both of them rolling clear as the impact cracks the ground into a small crater. Fall back to the gate line, Chu Yinggren shouts, already back on her feet, weapon fully drawn now, a curved blade that hums faintly along its edge. Wei, cover Shuya's cast. I don't hear the rest. I'm moving on the only instinct 5 years of carrying bags has ever given me. Get low, get behind cover, get out of the way. I drop behind the broken ridge stone and watch 4 awakened, one of them S-rank, a name people put on posters, brace to fight something the association told them was routine. The thing's seam of a mouth opens wider than its own head should physically allow. Bai Shuya finishes her cast. Fire, real fire, enough to level a building, roars across the open ground toward the creature's center mass. It doesn't burn, it doesn't even slow. I press myself flatter against the stone, notebook still somehow gripped in one hand out of pure reflex. And I watch the thing that isn't E-rank anything close the distance on my team in 3 strides. The last thought I have before the first scream cuts the air isn't hope. It's the same thing it's always been. Every gate, every job, every year of being furniture. I am going to survive this by staying small and staying out of the way. I have no idea yet how wrong that's about to be. Chu Yinggren meets it head on. That's who she is. S-rank, 3 years undefeated on record, the kind of fighter who doesn't retreat first and ask questions later. Her blade catches the creature's forward limb, turns it, and for 1 second it actually looks like a fight instead of a slaughter. Then the creature's other arm comes from a direction her stance wasn't built to cover, and it goes through her at the waist. There's no drawn-out moment. No slow motion. 1 second she's mid-swing, weapon singing along that curved edge, and the next she's 2 pieces on the ground, and the creature hasn't even slowed its stride. Nobody screams yet. The scream comes half a second later from Tang Wei, and it isn't fear, it's fury, the kind that gets people killed faster than fear does. He throws himself at the thing's flank instead of falling back like the captain ordered before she stopped being able to order anything. I'm still behind the ridge stone. I watch him land 3 clean hits, precise, trained, everything he spent years learning, and the creature doesn't react to any of them like they happen. It backhands him without turning to look, and he doesn't get back up. Bai Shuya is screaming his name and casting at the same time, hands shaking, fire building weaker than before because her focus is split between grief and survival. The other two fighters, I never learned their names beyond the twins. They'd joined 6 months ago, always paired up on watch. Try to flank from opposite sides. The kind of coordinated pincer that works against almost anything in the association's database. It doesn't work against this. One of them goes down to a strike that takes the whole left side of him. The other freezes for exactly the wrong half-second, staring, and that's enough. 4 of my team are dead in under 90 seconds. I haven't moved from behind the stone. I haven't done anything except watch, which is the only thing I've ever been able to do. And for the first time in 5 years, I hate myself for it with a clarity that cuts through the fear. Bai Shuya is still alive, barely. She's dragging herself backward on one working arm, staff broken, the creature turning toward her at a pace that says it isn't worried about anything left in this clearing. I move. I don't think about it as brave. It isn't. It's the only decision available to someone who can't fight. Get to her before it does, get her behind the ridge, by 10 seconds. I close the distance low, grab her under the arms, and haul her backward as the creature's strike lands where she'd been a half-second before. Close enough that the shockwave throws us both the rest of the way behind cover. Go, she says, blood on her teeth. Get out of the gate, not without you. It's not loyalty. I don't have time to examine what it is. I get an arm under her and start pulling her toward the gate's shimmer, visible now at the edge of the clearing, close enough to almost believe in. The creature finds us before we're halfway there. Bai Shuya's last spell isn't offensive. It's a shield, weak, thrown up between us and the incoming strike with whatever she has left, and it costs her everything. The strike goes through the shield and through her, and she doesn't get back up either. I'm alone in the clearing with something that has killed 4 awakened, one of them S rank, without slowing down once. A piece of broken blade, Chu Yinggren's, snapped off near the hilt when the creature's arm went through her, is on the ground near my foot. I pick it up because my hands need something to do, and because dying with empty hands feels worse than dying with a broken sword. The creature turns toward me, last, unhurried. I'm not a threat. I've never registered as one to anything, not to gear, not to teammates, not to the association's ranking system, and apparently not to this. It comes anyway, because I'm the only thing left standing in the clearing. I get one shard of the blade into its foreleg before the counter-strike catches me across the chest and throws me 20 feet into the base of the altar stone. Something in my side tears. When I try to breathe, it comes out wrong, wet, and there's a piece of Chu Yinggren's shattered blade buried in my ribs that I don't remember landing on. HP, 1%. The creature raises a claw. This is where we were. The claw is coming down. I have no skill that can stop it, no weapon that isn't broken or buried in someone else, and one thought, I am not doing this again. Something changes before the claw lands. Level up, level up, level up. The text doesn't scroll, it floods. 47 lines stacking faster than my eyes can track, my whole status window rewriting itself in real time while my body is still bleeding out on the ground. Passive skill. Endurance has mutated to body on the brink. Passive skill. Perception has mutated to predator's eye. I don't understand any of it yet. I don't have time to. The claw is already committed to the strike, and my body, not my mind, my body, moving on something that isn't training because I have no training, rolls left half a second before impact. The claw takes a chunk out of the ground where my skull was. I feel that half second differently than I've ever felt anything. Everything is slower and sharper at once, like my eyes just started working correctly for the first time in my life. Predator's eye, the window tells me, and I don't have time to ask what that means before the creature is already recovering, already turning for a second strike. I don't get up clean. I get up like something dying that refuses to admit it. HP, 1% still, the number not moving because there's nothing left to move, but I'm standing, and I wasn't a second ago. The second strike lands. It should end everything. Instead, something under my skin absorbs part of the force wrong, unnaturally, body on the brink, flashing across my vision as I go down again, ribs screaming but breathing. Level up, level up. I don't fight it back with technique, I have none. I fight it back the only way I know how, by refusing over and over on a body that keeps almost dying and keeps not quite dying to stay down. Every near miss, every half second, I claw back from zero. The counter on my status window climbs, and something in my chest that used to be plain human endurance starts rewriting itself into something that doesn't have a name I recognize yet. I don't know how many times it hits me. I stop counting somewhere around the fourth time I get back up. The world narrows down to the creature's seam of a mouth, the broken shard still somehow in my hand, and the growing, sick certainty that I am running out of times to stand back up before one of them is the last one. The creature seems, for the first time, to hesitate, not from injury, from something closer to confusion. This thing that killed 4 awakened without effort can't understand why the smallest, weakest one in the clearing keeps refusing to finish dying. I use that half second. I don't have a plan. I don't have a strategy or a technique or a skill worth the name. I have a shard of broken sword, a body held together by something that started existing about 4 minutes ago, and every ounce of momentum left in legs that shouldn't still work. I put the shard through the seam of its mouth with everything I have left. It doesn't die instantly. Nothing this size does. But something behind that seam ruptures, and the creature's stride breaks, and it staggers back into the altar stone hard enough to crack it further, and then it goes still in a way that has nothing graceful about it. I go still too, a moment later, face down in dirt soaked with people I knew, HP number still reading a fraction of a percent, alive by a margin too thin to call a margin at all. The last thing I see before the world goes dark at the edges is my status window, patient, indifferent, still logging, rank F to A-. I am the only thing standing in a clearing where 5 other people aren't, and I don't have the strength left to feel anything about that yet. The rescue team finds me 2 hours after the gate's instability alarm trips on its own. Nobody called it in. The gate itself registered that something inside had died at a scale it wasn't supposed to log. I'm barely conscious when they pull me out. I remember fragments, a stretcher, someone's gloved hand checking my pulse and going very still when they find it. A voice saying this one's alive, like that's the strange part of the sentence. Not the 5 bodies around me. I wake up in a secure medical bay with a drip in my arm and a status window that still hasn't stopped humming quietly in the corner of my vision. Rank, a minus. 5 days ago, I didn't have a combat skill worth logging. I don't feel triumphant. I feel like something scraped hollow and refilled with something that doesn't fit right yet. The first person through the door isn't a doctor. It's an association investigator in a gray uniform, tablet already out, and her first question isn't, "Are you okay?" Explain how a captain tier fatality event produced a rank jump from F to A- in under an hour. I don't have an explanation that sounds sane. I have a passive skill nobody ever took seriously because it requires almost dying to work, and I have the honest truth, which is that I don't fully understand what happened to me either. I tell her anyway. The altar, the creature, the mislabeled classification, the fact that 4 people are dead because a report said E rank and meant something else entirely. She writes it all down without her expression changing once. The guildmaster and the other 4 members of Asura 3 are confirmed deceased, she says. You are the sole survivor and the only person present when the classification discrepancy occurred. You understand how that looks? I do. It looks like I'm either the luckiest F rank in history or the only suspect in a room with 5 corpses. Word moves fast in a city with 3 major guilds and 1 licensing body. By the time I'm discharged, under supervision, my file flagged, my registered address on record for follow-up, 3 separate stories about me are already circulating, and none of them are the truth. The association's internal logic isn't cruelty, it's procedure. A statistically impossible rank jump attached to a mass casualty event is a liability they can't leave unexamined, and quietly containing the anomaly until they understand it is safer for them than letting it walk around unsupervised. I'm not being hunted because anyone hates me yet. I'm being hunted because I'm a loose variable. Guild Asura is a different problem. Half the guild wants to know what really happened in that gate. The other half has already decided. I was the only one who walked out. Therefore, I'm the reason the others didn't, and grief doesn't care about the difference between correlation and guilt. I go back to my apartment because I don't have anywhere else, and because 5 years of logging every gate I've ever entered means I have paper records, dates, coordinates, classification notes, that don't exist anywhere else. Those notebooks are the only thing I have that might prove the classification was wrong before the fact, not just wrong in hindsight. I'm 3 pages into copying the relevant entries when the building's power cuts. It isn't subtle once it starts. 2 association operatives come through the front door at the same moment. A third breaches the fire escape window. Textbook triangulated entry, the kind of clean, simultaneous breach that isn't meant to give a target time to think. I don't have training. I have 4 minutes of frantic memory flash from the gate clearing and a status window that's still logging every heartbeat like it's waiting for something. The nearer operative gets a hand on my collar before I fully register he's in the room. I twist wrong, off balance, and his partner's stun baton catches me across the ribs, the same ribs the sword shard went through 2 days ago, still healing. And the pain of it is enough to blank out thought entirely. HP drops fast. Not to 0, not yet, but low enough that something under my skin recognizes the threshold, and body on the brink flares awake without me asking it to. I move differently than I did a second ago. Not stronger. Faster, and wrong in a way that makes the first operative overcommit to a grab that isn't there anymore. I get his wrist, use his own momentum to put him into the second operative's line, and I'm through the gap before either of them resets. The third comes through the window as I reach it, and there isn't room to dodge around him in a corridor this narrow. I don't decide to do what happens next so much as recognize, in the half second before impact, that I have a choice most people would never make. Take the hit clean or throw myself forward into it. Let it land closer to lethal than survivable, and trust the thing that woke up in that clearing to catch me on the way down. I choose the second one. It's the first time I choose it. It will not be the last. The impact puts me through a support beam instead of just past him. HP drops hard enough that the window flashes red at the edges of my vision, and for 1 full second everything goes distant and slow the way it did in the clearing. Predator's eye painting the room in a clarity that has nothing to do with fear anymore. I see the gap in his stance before he does. I'm through it and past him before he can adjust. Out the same window he came through, 4 floors up, no plan for the landing except the same thing that's kept me alive for the last 2 days. Refuse to stop moving until the ground makes the decision for me. I hit a fire escape landing 2 floors down harder than anything should be hit and survive it anyway, because whatever body on the brink actually is, it isn't finished paying out. Somewhere in an association command vehicle 3 streets away, the lead investigator watches the feed from the breach team's helmet cameras loop back twice before she believes it. He shouldn't have gotten through 2 operatives without a combat registered skill, her partner says. He doesn't have a combat registered skill, she says. That's what worries me. I don't stop running until I'm 6 blocks away, in an alley that smells like rust and rain, doubled over a dumpster with my ribs screaming and my HP crawling back up from somewhere in the single digits. My notebooks are still in the bag on my back. That's the only thing I checked for before I went out the window. I sit down on wet concrete because my legs stop being a reliable option, and for the first time since the clearing, I let myself actually look at what just happened instead of just surviving it. I chose that? Not the first strike, that one was luck and instinct. But throwing myself into the third operative's attack, deliberately closer to the edge than I needed to be, because some part of me now understands that the edge is where the growth lives. That should terrify me more than it does. I have no money that isn't flagged, no allies, no team, and a body that's already learned a lesson I'm not sure I can unlearn. That dying, a little, on purpose, is the only tool I've ever had that actually works. I stay in the alley until the rain starts, and I don't move again until it does, because moving means deciding where a person with no name that anyone remembers correctly is supposed to go next. The message comes through a public terminal I haven't used in months, on an account I forgot I still had. I know what happened at the gate. I know it wasn't E-rank before you walked in. Meet me if you want to know why. Ping this address if you're not already dead. No name attached, no proof it isn't a trap sent by whoever wants me quiet. I sit in a 24-hour noodle stall with my hood up, HP fully recovered, notebooks in my bag, and I weigh the 2 options I actually have. Trust a stranger, or keep running alone until the association or someone worse finds me first. Alone hasn't been working. I ping the address. She's waiting in a maintenance corridor behind a shuttered print shop, sitting on an overturned crate like she's been there for hours and doesn't mind it. Mid-20s, sharp-eyed, a portable terminal balanced on one knee with 3 separate encrypted feeds running across it. She doesn't stand when I come in. Liu Na, she says. Former data analyst, Association Gate Classification Division. Emphasis on former. Fired for finding something they didn't want found. She turns the terminal toward me. You want to know why a routine E-rank gate had a king-tier entity waiting behind an unlisted altar? I can show you the paperwork. I don't sit down yet. Why do you care what happened to me specifically? I don't, particularly. She says it flat, no performance in it. I care that the classification fraud I got fired for reporting just killed 4 awakened, including an S rank, and the association is currently trying to make that my fault too, quietly. Before anyone connects the dots, you surviving is inconvenient for them. Inconvenient for them is useful for me. It's not a warm reason. It's an honest one, which is worth more to me right now. She pulls up a classification file. The gate, my gate, time-stamped 2 days before the clear. Reassessed downward from a flagged, unconfirmed anomaly rating to a clean E rank in under 6 minutes, signed off by a single evaluator with no field verification logged. Someone paid to have that gate look safe, she says. I don't have proof of who yet. I have proof that it happened, and proof it's not the only one. 3 other gates in the last 8 months got the same 6-minute rubber stamp from the same evaluator's terminal ID. Why would anyone want a gate to look weaker than it is? Because a weak-looking gate gets a small team instead of a full mobilization. Small team means fewer eyes, fewer questions, and if something inside is worth harvesting quietly, a rare drop, an unregistered anomaly, a captain, someone once gone in a way that looks like an accident, nobody's watching close enough to notice. She shrugs. I don't know yet who benefits from Chu Yinggren specifically being dead. I know the pattern isn't random. I think about the report I read on the way in, the one that said routine training clear, about a captain who never got the full mobilization she'd have gotten for anything flagged even slightly dangerous. I have 5 years of field notes, I say. Every gate I've walked into. If your 6-minute evaluator touched any of them, then we cross-reference and we've got a pattern with a paper trail instead of a theory. For the first time, something that isn't pure calculation crosses her face. That's more than I've had in 4 months of digging alone. We don't get an hour of peace to start on it. The corridor door at the far end doesn't open with a key. It gets kicked in, and 3 figures move through it in a formation too clean to be opportunistic. Guild colors I don't recognize on their shoulder plating. Black trimmed in a deep red I'll learn later belongs to Tianren. That's not association, Liu Na says, already killing her terminal feeds and shoving the device into her jacket. Guess that part. The lead one doesn't bother with a demand or a warning. He just moves fast, straight at Liu Na, which tells me everything about the actual priority here. I'm the survivor, but she's the one with the evidence. I don't have a plan beyond get between them, which is what I do, taking a strike meant for her shoulder across my forearm instead. It hurts enough to make my vision swim, HP dropping in one clean chunk, but it isn't the kind of hit that opens the door body on the brink answers. Not yet. Kill the lights, Liu Na shouts. And she's already moving before I understand the instruction, throwing something small and black against the far wall junction box. The corridor goes fully dark half a second later, emergency strips flickering dead. In the dark, my predator's eye does something the others clearly don't expect. I can still see shapes, movement, the faint heat shimmer of 3 bodies repositioning to search by sound instead of sight. It isn't a fair fight even now. 3 trained operatives against 1 enhanced instinct and a woman with a smoke canister is not a fight I win outright. It's a fight I don't have to win outright. I only have to survive it long enough for her plan, whatever it is, to work. Left passage now, she hisses, close enough that I can follow her voice instead of guessing. We run instead of fighting further, which feels like the correct call the second I make it. I take a glancing hit across the ribs going through the narrow gap after her. HP dropping into territory that makes my hands shake, but I don't go down. And I don't stop moving until the print shop's side exit dumps us into a rain-slick side street 3 blocks from where we started. Behind us, the pursuit doesn't immediately follow. Whatever Liu Na threw into that junction box did more than kill the lights. We don't stop running until the rain and the distance convince us both it's safe enough to breathe. They knew where you'd be, I say, once I can talk without gasping. That corridor wasn't random. Someone tracked you here. Or tracked you. She's checking her terminal grim. Either way, that wasn't association. Association wants you contained and questioned. That formation wasn't here to question anyone. Who then? I have a guess. She doesn't say the name yet. I'll learn it's Tianren soon enough, and the shape of what it means will take longer. But her face has gone carefully neutral in the particular way of someone deciding how much to tell a man she met an hour ago. Someone who doesn't want the classification fraud connected to a name. Someone with the reach to send trained operatives after a data analyst instead of just deleting a file. I think about the size of that answer and decide I don't actually want to hear the rest of it standing in the open, soaked with HP still crawling back from red. I'm not letting this go, I tell her. 4 people are dead because someone decided a gate should look safer than it was. I want to know who. Then we're doing this together, she says, because I'm not stupid enough to keep digging alone after tonight, and you're not exactly swimming in other options. She's right. I don't have money, I don't have a team, I don't have anywhere the association or whoever just tried to kill her won't eventually think to look. What I have is 5 years of notes, a body that grows stronger the closer it gets to dying, and, as of tonight, one ally who wants the same answer I do for reasons that have nothing to do with sympathy for me. It's not much. It's more than I had this morning. Where do we start? I ask. She's already walking. Somewhere they won't expect either of us to be stupid enough to go. Liuna finds the name 2 days later, buried in a personnel record she isn't supposed to have access to anymore. Qin Dushin, she says, turning her terminal toward me across the safe house table. A rented storage unit with a cot in it, nothing that looks lived in on purpose. A rank tank, 7 years with Tianren. Formally discharged 4 months ago for conduct unbecoming. What's the real reason? He refused a field order. Tianren's been running something called probe operations, sending low-rank contracted fighters into unverified anomaly zones ahead of the real team, to map boss behavior before committing anyone valuable. She scrolls. Qin was ordered to hold a probe team in position past their extraction window so the data collection would run longer. 3 of them died holding that line. He got the survivors out against orders and got thrown out of the guild for it. I read it twice. That's not conduct unbecoming. That's the only decent thing anyone in this whole story's done, which is exactly why Tianren can't let him talk freely. He knows the probe program exists, he knows people died running it, and he's angry enough about it that he's been asking questions in places that make him easy to find. She sets the terminal down. If we can find him, so can they. I think that's already happening. We find him faster than either of us expects, because he isn't hiding. He's outside a shuttered gear shop in the industrial district, 3 Tianren enforcers and a loose triangle around him. And it's obvious from the tension in his stance that this conversation started as a warning and is about to become something worse. He's built like something meant to stop force rather than avoid it, wide through the shoulders. A plated gauntlet on one forearm that looks less like decoration and more like the reason he's survived 7 years of close quarters work. Even outnumbered 3 to 1, he isn't backing down, which tells me either he's confident or he's out of options and has decided to make it cost them. Last chance, one enforcer says. Guildmaster wants a conversation, not a body. Tell your guildmaster I already had that conversation, Qin Dushin says, with the 3 people who died so his data set would run longer. That's enough for the enforcer to stop pretending this is a negotiation. I don't decide to help him so much as recognize, in the half second before the first strike lands, that 3-on-1 isn't a fight I can watch happen twice in 1 week and call myself anything other than what I've always been. Furniture that stands aside. I move in from the side while their attention is fixed forward. It isn't a clean ambush. Predator's eye gives me the gap in their formation, but not the strength to exploit it cleanly, and the enforcer I hit rolls with most of the impact and rounds on me instead. Who's this? He says, more annoyed than alarmed, and that annoyance is the last mistake he gets to make before Qin Dushin's gauntlet connects with the side of his head hard enough to put him down. Didn't ask for help, Qin Dushin says, already turning to meet the second enforcer's rush. Wasn't really asking. The fight that follows isn't clean or fast. Qin Dushin absorbs hits that would drop me outright. Planting himself in front of strikes meant for both of us, with the flat certainty of someone who's built his entire fighting style around being the wall other people get to survive behind. I'm not built for that role. I'm built for the opposite. Thin margins, calculated risk, closing distance at exactly the moment a body is willing to bleed for it. The third enforcer breaks off from Qin Dushin and comes for me directly, correctly identifying the weaker target, and for a few seconds I'm taking hits I have no business surviving. HP crawling down toward the threshold where body on the brink finally answers. It answers late and rough, a burst of unnatural speed that lets me get inside his guard instead of away from it. And I put the pommel of a borrowed blade into his throat hard enough that he goes down choking instead of swinging. Qin Dushin finishes the second enforcer a breath later, driving him into the shop's shuttered door with enough force to buckle the metal. 3 down. None dead. Qin Dushin made sure of that, dropping each one with enough control to leave them breathing, which I notice and file away as something that tells me more about him than the personnel record did. You didn't have to jump in, he says afterward, checking the gauntlet for damage instead of looking at me. You didn't have to keep them alive, I say. Most people in your position wouldn't bother. That gets a look finally, something assessing behind it. Killing them doesn't fix anything. It just gives the guild an excuse to escalate. He nods at my arm where blood's soaking through from the fight. You're not registered combat rank. What are you? Complicated. Fair. He doesn't push. Why'd you actually jump in? I think about the honest answer. That I watched my whole team die 3 days ago because I couldn't do anything, and I've decided I'm done being the person who watches. And I give him the shorter version instead. Same guild that just sent 3 men after you tried to have me killed twice this week. Figured we might have overlapping problems. Luna steps out from where she'd been covering the alley mouth, terminal already out. Chin-dushin, I have your discharge file, the real reason behind it, and 3 names attached to the probe program that got your team killed. I also have proof the same evaluator who greenlit your worst mission signed off on the gate that killed 4 awakened 3 days ago. He goes very still. Same evaluator, same terminal ID, different disasters. She turns the screen toward him. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's a system. He looks at the screen for a long moment, then at me, then at the 3 unconscious enforcers on the ground, evidence of exactly how far his old guild is willing to go to keep people quiet. I've spent 4 months trying to prove this alone, he says, getting myself noticed instead of getting anywhere. He closes his hands slowly, gauntlet plates settling. What's the actual plan? Right now, survival, I say. After that, making it impossible for them to keep doing this. It isn't a speech, I don't have one in me, but it's honest, and it's apparently enough because he falls into step beside us without another question, and for the first time since the gate, the walk back to the safe house doesn't feel like 3 people running from something. It feels like 3 people about to start causing a problem for somebody else. We need money that isn't traceable, which means we can't take association-registered contracts, which means we're down to the kind of work official guilds turn down because the payout doesn't justify the risk on paper. Luna finds the job through a contact 3 layers removed from anything traceable to her old life, a village on the eastern farmland belt. Sitting close enough to an unstable gate that 3 separate guilds have quoted the clear and walked away when they saw the numbers. Association rated it D rank, unstable classification, recommend full team. She reads off the request. No guild will touch a D rank unstable for what these people can pay. We can. Can we? Chin-dushin asks. We're 3 people, one of whom throws himself at monsters on purpose. I don't throw myself at anything I haven't survived before, I say, which isn't as reassuring as I mean it to be, judging by his face. We take the job anyway. The village elder meets us at the edge of a cracked field with weather-worn hands and the particular exhaustion of someone who's already been told no by everyone with the resources to say yes. Half the village's water supply runs through land. The gate's instability has been slowly poisoning for months. We hired someone before, he says. A retired hunter, cheap, went in with us to scout the perimeter. Went in, Luna repeats, careful, past tense. He's why we know it's worse than D rank now. We hire the only extra hand we can afford, a freelance fighter named Old Dung, mid-40s, more scars than teeth, who takes half payment up front and doesn't ask enough questions about why 3 strangers with no guild tabard are running an unofficial clear. He should have asked more. The gate inside looks nothing like a D rank instability. The moment we're through, the air itself feels wrong, pressure shifting in a way that has nothing to do with weather. And the first pack of feral constructs that finds us is bigger and faster than anything a D-rank classification should produce. Association's wrong again, Chin-dushin says, already bracing. Or someone's making it wrong on purpose, Luna mutters. Same pattern, smaller scale, we don't have time to debate it. The constructs come in a wave. 6 of them, jagged crystalline bodies moving with a coordination that shouldn't exist in mindless things. Chin-dushin anchors the center, taking the brunt of 2 at once, gauntlet cracking crystal on impact. I circle to the flank the way we drilled on the walk here. Draw one off, force it to overcommit, let Predator's eye find the gap between its strikes. Old Dung doesn't circle. He panics, backing toward a narrow rock defile instead of holding formation, and 2 constructs peel off to follow the easier target. Dang, hold the line, Chin-dushin shouts, but the old fighter's already committed to the wrong choice, swinging wide and off balance, and the defile he's backed into turns out to be a dead end. I break off to reach him. I don't make it in time. The first construct gets past his guard clean. The second finishes what the first started. By the time I close the distance, there's nothing left to save. Just a man who took half payment for a job that killed him faster than any of us expected. And two constructs turning toward me with the fight not remotely over. I go into that fight already off my center, already carrying the weight of a death that happened because we didn't have enough hands to cover the whole line. And it costs me. I take a hit across the same ribs that never fully healed from the association ambush, HP dropping hard enough that body on the brink flares without asking permission. And I finish both constructs in a state closer to controlled desperation than skill. By the time the last one goes down, all three of us are bleeding, one hired hand is dead, and the water source we came here to save is still poisoned. Because clearing the surface constructs was never actually the whole job. There's a corrupted core further in, and none of us have anything left to push toward it today. We retreat. It's the first time since forming this team that we survived doesn't feel like a win. The village elder doesn't blame us when we explain what happened, which somehow makes it worse. He pays what he can, which is less than we agreed, and nobody argues about it. We make camp 2 miles out, rather than risk the road back to the city with the state we're in. Dushin builds a fire without being asked. Liu Na sits apart, running numbers on her terminal that have nothing to do with tactics. She's calculating how much we lost against how much we have left, and the math isn't kind. I sit with my back against a rock, ribs wrapped in whatever's left of the medical kit, and I don't notice the woman until she's already crouched in front of me with a satchel of her own. "You're bleeding through that," she says, "not a question. Let me look." She doesn't wait for permission before her hands are on the wrapping, efficient, unbothered by the mess underneath. Han Meiyan, she tells me, once she's got the wound properly cleaned, a healer who's been running unregistered clinics out of farm towns for 2 years, treating anyone the official system won't. No rank checks, no fees, people can't pay. The village elder called her the moment we retreated. "This wound's healed wrong before," she says, frowning at the scar tissue underneath the fresh damage. "Healed fast, but wrong. What did that?" I don't have a clean answer, a skill. It reacts when I'm close to dying. Fixes things faster than it should, but not cleanly. She looks at me for a long moment, the kind of look that isn't clinical anymore. "You've done that on purpose, more than once. It isn't an accusation. It's worse. It's recognition. I don't have another way to grow," I say. "It's not a trick. It's the whole skill. Closer to dying, faster the growth. I didn't choose the mechanic. I've just started choosing to use it." "That's not a skill," she says quietly. "That's a habit that's going to kill you slower than the monsters would." I don't have an answer for that either. She stays anyway. Not because of the wound, that's stitched and settled within the hour, but because, as she puts it later, watching Dushin feed the fire and Liu Na finally close her terminal for the night, somebody has to be here who's paying attention to what it's actually doing to you, since you clearly aren't. Nobody argues with her logic. Nobody has the energy to. We sit around a fire 2 miles from a job that cost a man his life and a village its water, and for a while, nobody says anything useful at all. Dushin breaks the silence eventually, telling a bad joke about the crystalline constructs that gets a laugh out of Liu Na despite herself. Han Mian finishes wrapping my ribs properly and doesn't lecture me again, not tonight. It isn't victory. We failed the actual job. A man is dead who didn't have to be, and the corrupted core under that gate is still there, still poisoning a village's water, waiting for someone with more resources than 4 broke fugitives to come finish what we couldn't. But there are 4 of us now instead of 3, sitting around a fire instead of running separately, and for the first time since the clearing, I let myself feel something that isn't just the next threat. It doesn't last. It isn't supposed to, but it's real while it does. 3 weeks pass in a rhythm none of us planned, but all of us fall into anyway. We take the jobs nobody official will touch, a C-rank instability threatening a mining outpost, a pack of migrated horrors nesting too close to a highway checkpoint, a flooded lower gate that 2 guilds quoted and abandoned. None of them are clean. All of them pay. Han Meiyan stops flinching every time I come back with HP in the red, though she never stops checking the wounds after, cataloging what my body does that it shouldn't. Dushin and Han Meiyan develop a rhythm of their own that has nothing to do with combat. He teases her for over-preparing every medkit like we're heading into a siege instead of a job. She needles him for taking hits he doesn't need to take just to prove the wall can hold. Neither of them means it unkindly. It's the particular affection of two people who've decided, without saying so, that keeping me alive is a shared project worth arguing about. Liuna spends every hour we're not fighting buried in fragments. 3 more classification files with the same 6-minute rubber stamp signature. One of them tied to a gate that killed an entire independent contractor crew 8 months ago, quietly written off as operator error. "It's not random," she says one night, spreading printouts across the safehouse table. "It's not even hidden that well. Whoever's doing this isn't worried about getting caught because nobody with the authority to investigate has any reason to look. Which means whoever benefits has enough weight to make sure nobody looks," Qin Dushan says. "Tianren," she says. It's the first time she's said the name plainly instead of circling it. Every flagged file traces back through contracts that either directly involve Tianren-adjacent guild business or clear the way for Tianren to take credit on the recovery afterward. We started with nothing. 3 weeks in, we've got a functioning safe house, enough saved capital to cover a month without a job, 4 sets of working gear, and a paper trail with a name attached to it. It isn't victory. It's a foundation, and for the first time since the clearing, I let myself notice how far that foundation has come from a man who used to carry other people's water. The job that changes things is supposed to be simple. A courier run through a low-tier gate, escorting a data drive Liu Na's contact needs moved without going through any monitored network. In and out, no combat expected. 6 Tianren operatives are waiting for us on the other side of the gate's threshold before we've taken 10 steps. Not enforcers this time. Their formation alone tells me that tighter, quieter, weapons already drawn instead of postured, the kind of squad that doesn't get sent to deliver a warning. Qin Dushan goes rigid beside me. "Those are Blade Corps," he says, low. "Guild's actual combat division. Somebody upgraded the response. There's no time to retreat before they close. The fight that follows is nothing like the ones before it. These aren't overconfident enforcers who underestimate a fugitive and a discharged tank. They fight in coordinated pairs, covering each other's blind spots with a discipline that makes every opening I find close half a second before I can use it. Qin Dushan holds the center as long as he can, but 2 Blade Corps fighters working in tandem drive him back a full step for the first time since I've known him, and that alone tells me how far outmatched we are. I go into the fight the only way I know how, closing distance, forcing risk, trusting Predator's eye to find gaps human reflexes can't. It works twice. The third time, a fighter I didn't see reads the pattern of my recklessness and puts a blade through the meat of my shoulder before I can commit to the strike I was aiming. Han Meian screams something that might be my name. I don't hear the rest of it over HP dropping into territory that should trigger body on the brink. And it does, weakly, not enough. The fight has gone on too long, my reserves too thin, and the burst of speed that saved me every time before comes late and shallow, barely enough to keep the next hit from being the last one. "Fall back," Liu Na's voice cuts through, and for once nobody argues. Qin Dushan puts himself bodily between the Blade Corps squad and the rest of us, taking a hit meant for Han Meian across the ribs hard enough that I hear something crack from 10 feet away. And we run, no dignity in it, back through the gate threshold with the taste of a fight we did not win in our mouths. They don't pursue past the threshold. They don't need to. The message is already sent. We regroup 2 streets over, bleeding, furious, alive by a margin none of us are proud of. "We got lucky," Qin Dushan says, pressing a hand to his ribs, breath short. "That's not luck, we get twice." "They weren't here for the data drive," Luna says, checking her terminal with hands that aren't quite steady. "Blade Corps doesn't escort couriers. They were here for us specifically. Somebody decided we're worth a real response." Han Meian doesn't say anything. She's already working on my shoulder, jaw tight, and the silence says more than a lecture would. I don't have anything reassuring to offer. We went in expecting a courier run and walked into the guild's actual combat division, and the gap between what we can do and what Tianren's real strength looks like has never been clearer than it is right now, standing in an alley with 4 people who nearly didn't walk out of that gate. "We're not ready for whoever's actually running this," I say. "Not yet." Nobody disagrees. 3 miles away, in an office with a view of the district we just fled through, Jiang Taishu reviews the Blade Corps after-action report without a trace of the anger his lieutenants expected. 4 confirmed hostiles, 1 unregistered anomaly matching the survivor profile from the Asura 3 incident. His second reads aloud, "Engagement inconclusive." Hostiles retreated. Recommend escalation to lethal authorization. No. Jiang Taishu doesn't look up from the report. Not lethal. Guildmaster. This anomaly has now evaded 2 separate response teams and is actively assembling allies with knowledge of the classification irregularities. The exposure risk is exactly why I don't want him dead. He sets the report down. A man who survives a king-tier entity with no combat rank, who then survives a professional extraction attempt with no formal training, isn't a liability I dispose of. He's an asset I haven't acquired yet. He allows himself something close to a smile. Kill the witness, and I've destroyed evidence I could have owned instead. And if he won't be acquired, everyone can be acquired, Jiang Taishu says. It's only a question of what they haven't been offered yet. He dismisses the report with a gesture and turns back to the window, already reconsidering the shape of his next move. Not another squad, not yet. Something the fugitive with the growing file and the impossible survival record won't see coming, because it won't look like an attack at all. Back in the alley, none of us know yet that the calculus behind our last 3 weeks of near misses has just changed. What we know is simpler and colder. We built something out of nothing, and it isn't enough yet, and the people hunting us have more room to grow than we do. So what now? Chindushan asks, once Han Meian's finished with the worst of the bleeding. I think about the classification files, the pattern with Jiang Taishu's name not yet attached but close enough to feel inevitable, and the 4 people standing in this alley who didn't have to be here and are anyway. Now we get better faster than they expect, I say, because slower isn't an option anymore. Nobody argues with that either. There isn't anything left to argue about. The invitation doesn't come as a threat. It comes as a courier in plain clothes, no guild colors, leaving a sealed letter at the noodle stall where Lu Na first found me, addressed to a name none of us have used in weeks. Li Han. A conversation, not an ambush. Neutral ground, your choice of location, no armed escort on my end past the building perimeter. Jiang Taishu. He wants to meet you personally, Liu Na says, reading over my shoulder. Guildmaster doesn't do personal meetings. Not with anyone below A rank, and definitely not with someone his own people have already tried to kill twice, which means whatever he wants it more than he wants me dead, I say. Or he's decided dead isn't the efficient option anymore, Chindushan says. I've seen how he operates. He doesn't waste resources on revenge. If he's offering a meeting, it's because he thinks a meeting gets him something a kill order won't. Han Meian doesn't like it. She says so plainly, arms crossed, the same flat disapproval she uses whenever I come back with HP in the red. Walking into a room with the man who's spent 3 weeks trying to have you removed isn't strategy, it's bait taking itself to the hook. Maybe, I say. But we're not winning this by staying invisible forever. He knows where we operate. He knows Liu Na's evidence exists. At some point, we find out what he actually wants, on our terms or on his. We choose the location. A public tea house 2 blocks from a police substation, crowded enough that anything overtly violent draws immediate attention. It isn't safety, it's the best approximation of safety available to 4 people with no real leverage. Jiang Taishu arrives alone, which unsettles me more than an entourage would have. He's exactly what 3 weeks of files and rumors described. Composed, unhurried, the kind of presence that doesn't need volume to fill a room. He sits across from me like we're old colleagues catching up. You've caused my organization more disruption in 3 weeks than most A-rank threats manage in a year, he says, not as an accusation. Almost admiring. A courier ambush that should have ended, you walked away with 4 survivors instead. That's not luck. That's something worth understanding properly. Is that the offer? You want to understand me? I want to stop wasting resources trying to remove you when removing you was never the efficient choice. He folds his hands. Here is what I'm prepared to give you. A full pardon, processed through association channels I control the relevant committee seats on. Your rank formalized publicly. A minus, verified, no further scrutiny of how you obtained it. Compensation for the last 3 weeks that would take you a decade to earn on unregistered contracts. A pause, precisely timed. In exchange, you become the survivor story my guild needed after Asura 3's collapse. The man Tianren rescued and rehabilitated. You say nothing further about classification irregularities because there won't be any need to. You'll have everything you were fighting for, handed to you cleanly. It's a good offer. That's what makes it dangerous. Not the threat underneath it, but the fact that some tired, hunted part of me can see the shape of a life where I take it and stop running. And the 4 people I've built this with? Liu Na returns to a data position with full clearance restored, better than what she had before. Qin Dushan's discharge is quietly reversed if he wants it, or generously compensated if he doesn't. The healer isn't my concern either way, but I don't imagine she'd object to a life that doesn't require hiding in farm towns. He watches me carefully. Everyone gets what they actually wanted before all of this. Everyone except the 4 awakened who are already dead, and no offer on this table brings them back regardless of what you choose. I think about Chu Yinggren's name, still spoken wrong in my head. I think about a village whose water is still poisoned because we didn't have the resources to finish the job properly. I think about a system that let a captain tier team walk into a king tier ambush because someone 6 minutes and 1 signature away decided the paperwork mattered more than the people risking their lives on it. You're not offering me a pardon, I say. You're offering me a muzzle with better furniture. Something in his composure doesn't crack exactly, but it cools. I'm offering you the only version of survival that doesn't end with everyone you care about dead, eventually, because I have more patience and more resources than 4 fugitives operating out of a storage unit. Then I guess we'll find out whose patience runs out first. He studies me for a long moment, and I watch him recalculate in real time. Not anger, just a cold, immediate shift from one plan to the next. Pity, he says, standing. I'd hoped you'd be reasonable. We're 3 blocks from the tea house when the ambush comes, and it's not subtle this time. Blade Corps again, but more of them, and this time they're not here to make a point. They're here to end the conversation Zhang Taishu apparently decided wasn't worth continuing. He knew we'd say no, Qin Dushan snarls, already bracing as the first 2 operatives close from the alley mouth. This was never a real offer. It was real, Liu Na says, backing toward the wall. Terminal already useless in a fight like this. He just had a plan for both answers. There are too many of them. I count 6, then 8, spreading to cut off every exit before I finish counting. And Han Meian is the only one of us without a way to fight her way clear, which means the priority isn't winning. It's getting her out. Go, I tell her. Get clear, get somewhere they can't follow. We'll catch up. I'm not leaving you to... You're the only one of us who can't take a hit and walk away from it, I say. And it isn't cruel, it's just true. And she hates that it's true. And she goes anyway because Qin Dushan physically turns her toward the side passage and doesn't give her the choice to argue further. That leaves 3 of us against 8, and the fight that follows is the worst one yet. Qin Dushan holds a choke point alone for nearly a full minute, taking hits that would have killed anyone else twice over. Buying Liu Na the room to disable 2 operatives with an improvised current trap wired into a street lamp junction box. I take the rest, because there isn't anyone else to take them, and every choice I make from the first exchange onward is the same choice. Closer to the edge, not away from it, because the edge is the only tool that's ever actually worked. It goes further than it ever has. An operative's blade opens my side deep enough that I feel it hit something that shouldn't be exposed to air, and HP crashes through every threshold I've tested before, past the point where body on the brink usually answers, into territory that feels less like a skill activating and more like my body simply refusing the alternative. Level up, level up. Passive skill. Body on the brink has mutated to the line that doesn't break. I don't fully understand what changed. I understand that the world goes sharper and slower than it's ever gone, that the next 3 strikes against me connect and somehow don't finish what they should, and that when I come back to full awareness, there are 2 more operatives on the ground and I'm the only one standing where I was a moment ago. Qin Dushan finishes the last one a breath later, and then the alley is quiet and I'm on my knees in blood that's mostly mine, and the world is very far away for a few seconds that feel much longer than they are. Han Meian finds us before either of them can carry me anywhere, because she never actually went as far as we told her to. I said, get clear, I manage, which comes out as barely more than breath. I said I wasn't leaving you, she says, already working, hands steady despite everything her face is doing. Turns out we were both lying. Nobody laughs, nobody has it in them yet. But Qin Dushan huffs something close to it, dropping to sit against the alley wall with the specific exhaustion of a man who held a line alone and is only now letting himself feel what that cost. And Liu Na sits down hard beside him, terminal forgotten, hands not quite steady. We survived. Barely. Zhang Taishu's message is unmistakable now. There's no version of this where he lets us walk away quietly, offer refused or not. He's not going to stop, Liu Na says, once Han Meian's got the worst of my bleeding under control. Not after this. We turned him down in public. He can't afford to look weak. Then we don't give him the chance to look strong either, I say, and it costs me more than it should to get the words out, but I mean them. We finish what we started before he decides the next response isn't a squad. It's everything he has. Nobody argues. There isn't anything left to argue about, and for once, that isn't despair. It's just the plain shape of what comes next. We spend 4 days doing nothing that looks like fighting, and it's the tensest 4 days since the gate. Luna's theory is simple, even if the execution isn't. The 6-minute rubber stamp evaluator's terminal logs everything, but the association's live systems only keep the sanitized version. The version that shows a clean approval, not the version that shows what got overwritten to produce it. The unsanitized originals exist in exactly one place. Sealed archive, sub-level 4 of the association's central records building, she says, spreading a floor schematic across the safehouse table that she should not have access to and doesn't explain how she got. No network connection to the outside. You don't hack it. You walk out with it, physically, on a drive, or you don't get it at all. And getting in? Cheen Dushan asks. That's the part that isn't a fight, she says. Sub-level 4 isn't guarded like a vault because nobody expects anyone to want in badly enough to try. It's guarded like a filing room because that's what the association believes it is. The actual weakness isn't the security. It's the people running it. She spends 2 of the 4 days on something none of us can help with. Not surveillance, not code, just conversation. She finds a clerk named Old Bo, 3rd shift archive attendant. 40 years with the association and a pension that was quietly reduced 18 months ago over a filing discrepancy that was never his fault. She finds a junior records officer, Xiao Rui, passed over for promotion 3 cycles, running by a supervisor who takes credit for other people's audits. They're not traitors, Liuna tells me, the night before. They're the same as every low-status worker in every guild we've dealt with, treated as disposable by a system that needs them to function and won't admit it. I didn't have to convince Old Bo the association's corrupt. I just had to show him the file with his own reduced pension line item next to the 6-minute classification signature that killed 4 people and ask if that felt like a coincidence to him. And he just agreed? He agreed to look the other way for 90 seconds during his rotation. That's all I asked for. People don't need to become heroes to help you. They need a reason that already fits something they were angry about anyway. It's the same shape as everything else in this whole rotten structure. The bottom of one hierarchy finding common cause with the bottom of another, because both of them have spent years being told their resentment doesn't matter. The night of the operation, I'm not the one who goes in. That's deliberate. My file is flagged association-wide, my face recognized by every automated system in the building, and the last thing this plan survives is me walking anywhere near a facility with working cameras. Liu Na goes in with Xiao Rui's borrowed credentials and Old Bo's 90-second blind spot. Shindushin and I hold the perimeter 2 streets out, close enough to move fast, far enough not to trip anything. This is the part I hate, he mutters, watching the building's dark lower windows. Standing still while someone else does the dangerous part. Welcome to my last 5 years, I say, and he huffs something that isn't quite a laugh. Hunmayan stays with the vehicle, ready to move the instant anyone needs it, medical kit already staged. It goes wrong at the 11-minute mark, not catastrophically, but enough. Liu Na's voice comes through the calm low and controlled, which is somehow worse than panic would be. Partial alarm tripped. Not the whole building, just sub-level 4's motion grid. Xiao Rui's credentials didn't cover the secondary archive room. I had to force it manually, and that pinged something upstairs. How long do you have? Cheen Dushan asks. 4 minutes before a physical patrol comes down to check it. Maybe 5. Get what you can and get out, I say. Don't push for everything. I need the full run, not a partial. A partial doesn't prove the pattern. It just proves one incident, and one incident he can bury as an isolated error. She's right, which is the problem. 4 minutes isn't enough time to copy a full run of classification originals through a system not designed for fast extraction. I'll draw the patrol, Cheen Dushan says, already moving. Give her the extra time. They'll flag you on sight. They'll flag a large man loitering near a service entrance, which is what I already look like standing here. He's gone before I can argue further, moving toward the building's side approach with the unhurried confidence of someone who's about to make himself very visible on purpose. I don't see what happens next directly. I hear it through the comm, Chin Dushin's voice, deliberately loud, complaining about a delivery that was supposed to be here an hour ago, drawing exactly the kind of low-priority security attention that pulls a patrol toward a service door instead of down to sub-level 4. It costs him. 2 security officers detain him for questioning, hands on his arms, and he doesn't resist in a way that would escalate this into something the association takes seriously enough to lock the whole building down. He lets himself get held, argued with, patted down for a weapon he isn't carrying, running the clock exactly as long as he can stretch it. Copying now, Liu Na says, voice tight. 90 seconds. The patrol that would have gone to sub-level 4 is still upstairs, occupied with a man who picked exactly the right kind of harmless trouble to be. 40 seconds. I watched the building's rear exit from 2 streets out, doing the only thing available to me. Waiting, which has never once in my life felt this difficult. Got it, she breathes, finally. Not the full archive. About 70% of the run before the copy queue would have flagged as anomalous. It's enough. It has to be enough. She's out the service exit 90 seconds later, credentials burned behind her, moving fast but not sprinting, exactly the pace of someone who belongs in the building she's leaving. Chin Dushin talks his way loose from the security officers 12 minutes later with an apology, a fake ID that holds up under a cursory check, and a story about a delivery mix-up boring enough that nobody bothers verifying it further. We regroup 3 blocks from the building and nobody celebrates because 70% isn't everything, and one drive with a partial archive run doesn't undo what it cost to get it. We lost the file that would have named the guild directly behind the payments, Liu Na says, scrolling through the copied data with the specific frustration of someone who knows exactly what's missing. We've got the pattern. Repeated fraud, same terminal ID, timestamps that line up with 4 separate disasters. We don't have the payment trail connecting it to Tianren by name. That got flagged and locked before I reached it. Is what we have enough? Chin Dushin asks. Enough to make it impossible for the association to keep ignoring the pattern, she says. Not enough to guarantee they act against the guild responsible instead of just quietly firing the evaluator and calling it solved. I think about Zhang Taishu sitting across from me in that tea house, offering a muzzle with better furniture. I think about how a partial win here still gives him room to bury this the way he's buried everything else, quietly, efficiently, with resources none of us have. Then we publish what we have, I say, and we make sure it's loud enough that quiet isn't an option anymore. Liu Na looks up from the terminal, something calculating and grim settling into her expression. That's not going to make him back off. That's going to make him come at us with everything, in the open, because a quiet solution won't be available to him anymore either. I know. You're choosing the version where this gets worse before it gets better. I'm choosing the version where it actually ends, I say. Quiet hasn't worked for us once. I don't see why it'd start now. Nobody argues. Han Meian, silent through most of the debrief, finally speaks, checking the bandage on my side out of habit more than necessity at this point. If we're doing this loud, she says, we do it ready. Not like the tea house. Not like anything so far. She's right, and everyone in the room knows it, and for the first time since the gate, the plan in front of us isn't just survival dressed up as strategy. It's an actual line in the sand, drawn on purpose, by 4 people who've decided quiet was never going to save them anyway. Liu Na doesn't send the files to the association. She sends them everywhere else first. If it goes through official channels alone, it dies in a review committee for 6 months while Tianren has time to bury the rest, she says, finger hovering over the terminal. It goes out to 3 independent awakened rights outlets, 2 guild watchdog groups, and the association's own oversight board simultaneously. Nobody gets to sit on it quietly if everybody already has it. She sends it at dawn. By noon, it's not a rumor anymore. The fallout moves faster than any of us expect. 2 Tianren division commanders publicly distanced themselves from the guild within hours. One issuing a statement claiming he'd raised concerns about the classification practices privately and been ignored. Self-serving, but it cracks the guild's unified front regardless. A handful of rank-and-file Blade Corps fighters, the ones who fought us in that first ambush and the alley both, go quiet on internal channels Liu Na still has partial visibility into. Not defecting yet, just no longer answering orders with the same speed. He's bleeding support, Liu Na says, watching the numbers shift in real time. Not all of it, not even most of it, but enough that he can't treat this as contained anymore. Jiang Taishu's response comes 11 hours after publication, and it isn't subtle, and it isn't quiet, and it isn't aimed at containing anything. It's a guild-wide mobilization order, broadcast openly enough that half the city hears about it before we do. Tianren has declared us fugitives responsible for the theft of sealed association records and the fabrication of evidence against the guild. And every asset the organization has is authorized to bring us in by any means necessary. He's not hiding it anymore, Qin Dushan says, reading the broadcast over Liu Na's shoulder. He's betting the whole guild that public force wins faster than public opinion turns. Then we don't get to wait him out, I say. He's coming with everything. We need to be somewhere that works for us, not somewhere he chooses. We don't get to choose either. Tianren finds the safe house 4 hours later, not through any failure on our part, Liu Na determines afterward, but because Jiang Taishu simply committed enough resources to sweep every district we've operated in simultaneously, and we ran out of places to not be found. The fight starts in the storage district and doesn't stay there. What begins as an ambush on our position becomes, within 20 minutes, a running battle across 6 blocks of the industrial quarter. Us falling back through choke points Qin Dushan picks with brutal efficiency, buying room, losing ground, never quite losing the fight entirely. I've never seen this many fighters committed to one target. Blade Corps in force, enforcers filling every gap between them, and somewhere behind that wall of guild colors, Jiang Taishu himself, visible at a distance, unhurried, watching his organization's full weight come down on 4 people in an alley. He's here personally, Han Meian says, voice tight, already moving between us to patch a gash across Qin Dushan's forearm mid-fight. That's not caution. That's arrogance. Or he knows this ends today either way and wants to see it himself, I say. Qin Dushan takes the center of every choke point we retreat through, absorbing hits that would drop 3 ordinary fighters, and it costs him visibly. A strike meant for Han Meian catches his side instead, deep, the kind of wound that doesn't stop a fight immediately, but guarantees consequences later. He doesn't slow down. He plants himself harder. Liu Na, unable to fight directly, does the only thing she's ever needed to do. She reads the battlefield in real time, calling out formation gaps through the comm, redirecting our retreat through a collapsed loading dock that turns 6 pursuers into a bottleneck of 2. I stop retreating around the 4th block. It isn't a decision that arrives with fanfare. It's simpler than that, watching Qin Dushan bleed to buy us ground, watching Han Meian run herself past exhaustion trying to keep all 3 of us upright. I understand, clearly and completely, that surviving this by inches isn't going to be enough. Jiang Taishu has more resources than we can outlast defensively. The only version of this that ends with all 4 of us alive is one where I stop treating the edge as something I fall toward when cornered and start treating it as something I walk toward on purpose, offensively, before he's ready for it. Cover me, I tell Qin Dushan. I'm not falling back anymore. He doesn't argue. He just widens his stance and holds the line harder. I go through the next wave of Blade Corps fighters differently than I've fought anything before. Every previous fight, the edge found me. I bled into it because the alternative was dying anyway. This time, I choose the distance deliberately, taking hits I could technically avoid because closing that gap between HP and the threshold gets me Predator's Eye and the line that doesn't break faster. And faster is the only currency that matters in a fight this outmatched. It isn't clean. It isn't controlled. I take a blade across the same shoulder that's been opened twice already this month, and the pain of it nearly breaks my focus entirely, but the mutation answers immediately this time. No lag, no hesitation, and the world goes sharp and slow in the way that used to only happen when I was already dying. 3 Blade Corps fighters go down in the space it takes Qin Dushan to finish a 4th. It isn't strength in the way Jiang Taishu's people understand strength. It's a man willing to keep paying a price nobody else at this power level is willing to pay, over and over, faster than the math should allow. Jiang Taishu steps forward himself when the gap between us finally closes. You're going to kill yourself doing this, he says, drawing a blade that doesn't look ceremonial at all. Even if you win today. Maybe, I say, but I'll have won today. The duel that follows isn't long, by the standards of what an S-rank fight is supposed to look like. Jiang Taishu is faster than anyone I've fought yet, more precise, every strike calculated 3 moves ahead, and against a fighter operating on pure technique and years of mastery, I have exactly one advantage, which is that I've stopped being afraid of the cost. He opens a cut across my ribs that should end the exchange there. I don't let it. HP crashes toward a floor I've tested before and survived, and body on the brink's final mutation answers with something that isn't speed or strength so much as pure refusal, a body that has learned, through repetition, exactly how to keep functioning past the point where functioning should be impossible. I get inside his guard on an exchange he didn't expect me to survive long enough to attempt, and it isn't technique that lands the final strike. It's the simple fact that he calculated for a fighter who values his own life the way a normal fighter does, and I don't. Not in the moment it matters, not anymore. The blow that ends it isn't clean or dramatic. It's a shoulder strike that puts him off balance long enough for a follow-up he doesn't fully block, and then he's on the ground, weapon knocked clear. And I'm standing over him with HP low enough that the world is still tilting at the edges. He doesn't get back up immediately. When he does, it's slow, controlled, a man recalculating in real time rather than a man defeated. This doesn't end the guild, he says. You understand that. You've won a fight, not a war. I know, I say, but everyone watching just saw you lose to someone your own people called a fugitive with no combat rank. Around us, the fighting has stopped. Not because anyone called a retreat, but because a guild master losing publicly, in the open, to the man his entire organization was mobilized to erase, changes the calculation for every fighter still standing in that alley. Blade Corps operatives look to Jiang Taishu for an order that doesn't come cleanly. He gives the withdrawal signal himself, finally, and it costs him visibly to do it. We don't celebrate. There isn't room for it. Chindushin goes down the moment the adrenaline stops carrying him, the wound in his side worse than he led on through the entire fight. And Han Meiyan is working on him before he's even fully on the ground, her hands not steady for the first time since I've known her. He's stable, she says, after minutes that feel much longer, but that's not a wound that heals clean. He's going to carry that. Liu Na sits against a bullet-scarred wall, terminal cracked but functional, footage of the entire fight already streaming out through whatever channels she's kept open through all of this. The whole district saw this, she says, quiet, almost disbelieving. He lost, publicly, in front of everyone he needed to look untouchable in front of. I sit down because my legs finally agree to let me. HP crawling back up, slow, the cost of today settling into every part of me at once. I don't feel triumphant. I feel like something that spent everything it had and is only now finding out what's left. But something has changed today that goes beyond one fight. I came into this alley the same as I've come into every fight since the clearing, outmatched, improvising, surviving by inches. I walked out of it having beaten an S-rank guildmaster in front of his own organization, not through power I don't have, but through a willingness to pay a price he wasn't prepared to match. The world I've spent 5 years being furniture in just watched me stand over the man who ran it. It doesn't feel like winning yet. It feels like the floor shifting under something much larger than this one fight, and none of us, sitting bloodied in an alley that used to belong entirely to Tianren, fully understand yet how far that shift is about to go. We take 4 days to recover, because none of us have a choice about it. Chindushin's wound keeps him off his feet for most of it, propped against the safe house wall with a scowl that gets sharper every time Han Meiyan changes the dressing. She doesn't let him pretend it's healing faster than it is. You're not fighting again this week, she tells him, flat on the second day. Wasn't planning on it, he lies, badly. Jiang Taishu doesn't come after us again, not because he's given up. Liu Na confirms through what's left of her contacts that he's lost 2 more division commanders and a significant chunk of guild funding as clients quietly pull contracts rather than be associated with a guild master who lost publicly to a fugitive, but because whatever's left of Tianren's leadership is currently occupied with keeping the organization from fully collapsing under scrutiny. We bought ourselves a window. Nobody knows how long it lasts. Liu Na spends the 4 days on the 70% of the archive we recovered, cross-referencing it against everything she'd gathered before, trying to build the payment trail we lost when the extraction cut short. On the 4th night, she stops moving entirely, staring at her terminal the way someone stares at something they wish they hadn't found. I need everyone awake for this, she says. We gather around the table, Chindushin upright against Han Meiyan's objections, and Liu Na turns her terminal toward the center so all of us can see the same screen. I finally cross-reference the classification timestamps against something I hadn't checked before. The raw sensor logs from the gates themselves. not the reports written about them. Every single mislabeled gate going back years, past the ones tied to the evaluator we already know about. She pulls up a graph, a spread of points across a timeline that goes back further than any of us expected. The pattern doesn't start with him. He's not the source. He's the most recent tool. Tool for what? I ask. Every mislabeled gate on this list has one thing in common that has nothing to do with money or guild politics. She zooms into the data. The entity waiting behind each misclassification was never random. It was always something built to counter the specific profile of whoever the association sent in underprepared. Your gate wasn't corrupted to kill Chu Yinggren specifically. It was corrupted because whatever's behind this was interested in what was standing next to her. The room goes very quiet. You're saying it was interested in me. I'm saying the King of Void wasn't the anomaly, she says. It was a scout. A very old classification-linked pattern I found buried under 6 different bureaucratic layers calls it a herald, something that goes ahead of a larger entity, seeking out specific kinds of unregistered potential before the real thing arrives to collect it. She looks at me directly. Uncapped growth skills. Skills that don't follow the standard rank progression the system can predict. Yours isn't the first one this pattern's found, it's just the first one that survived contact. I think about the altar, about a structure that wasn't in any survey, that shouldn't have existed in an E-rank gate at all, that opened like it had been waiting specifically for someone to walk close enough. Someone built that, Chindushin says slowly. Someone paid to keep that gate looking safe. That's not the same as something ancient hunting rare skills. Both are true, Liu Na says. I think Zhang Taishu's evaluator fraud was real, was about money and convenience, exactly what we thought. I think whatever's behind this pattern doesn't need to bribe anyone directly. It just needs the classification system itself to be corruptible enough that its heralds occasionally slip through unnoticed. Human greed built the crack. Something much older is using it. What's the name? I ask, because there has to be one. Because things this patient and this old always have one somewhere in a record nobody reads. She hesitates before she answers, which tells me the answer is worse than I'm braced for. The oldest fragment I found calls it the Rank Devourer. There's almost nothing else on it, just references to it moving slowly across decades, feeding on exactly the kind of potential a standard S-rank system can't predict or cap. She closes the file. It's not hunting the strongest awakened in the world. It's hunting the ones the world doesn't know how to measure yet. That's you. That's why it hasn't stopped. Nobody says anything for a long moment. I think about 5 years of being told my rank meant I didn't count, and the possibility that the entire system built around counting people had this whole time been quietly leaving a door open for something that wanted exactly what made me uncountable. There's more, Liu Na says, quieter now. New gate readings started 3 hours ago downtown near the Central Plaza, not a normal opening. The instability signature matches the pattern from your original gate, scaled up by an order of magnitude I don't have good numbers for. It's coming, I say. It isn't a question. I think it already decided the herald did its job. I think it's done waiting. We don't leave for the plaza that night. There's nothing to fight yet, and Han Meian makes it clear, with a firmness none of us argue with, that walking into whatever's forming down there while Chindushin can barely stand and I'm still running on borrowed HP from 4 days ago is a plan that gets everyone killed for nothing. So we sit with it instead, all 4 of us, in a safe house that's held longer than any of us expected it to, with a threat forming 3 miles away that none of us fully understand yet. Han Meian finds me on the fire escape a little after midnight when I should be resting and I'm not, staring at the skyline instead. You're doing the math again, she says, not a question, sitting down beside me without asking. Every fight since the clearing, I've told myself the edge is a tool, something I control. I don't look at her. Liu Na just told me something ancient has been watching that exact tool since before I knew I had it. It's the reason I'm even alive to have this conversation. Does that change what you're going to do tomorrow? No, I admit, that's what scares me. She's quiet for a while, and when she speaks again, it isn't the clinical voice she uses when she's checking a wound. It's something plainer, more tired, and more honest than either of us usually allows. I didn't stay with this team to patch you up after every fight, she says. I stayed because somewhere in the last 2 months I stopped being able to imagine walking away and not knowing whether the next time you go past that edge, you come back. She finally looks at me. I'm not asking you to stop. I know you can't, not with what's coming tomorrow. I'm asking you to remember, in the middle of it, that there are people who need you to come back on purpose. Not just because your skill decided to let you. I don't have a clean answer for that. I'm not sure one exists yet. I'll try, I say, which is the most honest thing I have. She doesn't push for more. She just stays there a while longer, both of us watching a skyline with something enormous quietly assembling itself 3 miles away. And for a few minutes, neither of us says anything at all, because some things don't need to be said twice to matter. By morning, word has already spread. The new gate's instability is visible from half the city, a slow, wrong shimmer in the sky that no classification report is going to be able to lie about. Association mobilization sirens sound before dawn. What surprises me isn't the sirens, it's who shows up at the safe house door an hour later. 2 Blade Corps fighters, the ones who went quiet on Tianren's internal channels rather than answer Jiang Taishu's mobilization order, stand awkwardly on the threshold, out of uniform. No guild colors on either of them. We're not here for him, one says, nodding vaguely in a direction that might mean Jiang Taishu or might mean the whole guild. We're here because whatever's opening downtown isn't going to care which colors anyone's wearing when it gets here. Figured you could use hands that already know how to fight. Behind them, further down the street, 3 more figures approach. Survivors of Asura, the guild I used to carry bags for. Faces I half recognize from years of handing them canteens they never thanked me for. They don't look friendly exactly. They look like people who've decided old grudges are a luxury nobody in this city can afford today. Liu Na looks at the growing group with something between disbelief and grim calculation. This isn't loyalty, she says quietly, to me alone. This is survival math. Everyone in this city just watched what corrupted classification cost. Nobody wants to find out what an uncapped Herald's master looks like without every available hand on the line. Doesn't matter why they came, I say. Only matters that they did. We spend the morning preparing with people who were trying to kill us or ignore us a week ago because the thing opening downtown doesn't care about any of that history. And for the first time since the clearing, the fight ahead of us isn't 4 people against the world. It's the world, finally, deciding to stand on the same side of the line I've been standing on alone since a captain I never got to know properly died first. Disproving everything anyone believed about what an S-rank could survive. The plaza looks nothing like a battlefield until it does. By midday, the new gate has stopped shimmering wrong and started tearing, a slow, vertical fracture in the air wide enough to swallow a building, and the first wave comes through before anyone finishes setting a formation. Lesser things first, not the Herald-scale threat we're bracing for, but a flood of lower-ranked monsters pouring through the tear in numbers that make individual combat irrelevant. This is what the makeshift coalition is actually for. Association response teams anchor the outer perimeter. Blade Corps defectors hold the east line beside 3 Asura survivors who spent years training beside people who died in a gate I walked out of alone. Qin Dushin, still favoring his side, plants himself at the center choke point anyway because that's the only place he knows how to stand. You should be resting, I tell him, shouting it over the noise. You should be somewhere I can actually watch your back, he shouts back, so we're both doing something we shouldn't. Han Meian works a triage line 20 feet behind the front, moving between fallen fighters with a speed that has nothing left of hesitation in it. Liu Na, useless in direct combat, has planted herself at a mobile terminal wired into the association's live feed, calling out formation weaknesses through a borrowed comm channel to anyone willing to listen, and enough people are willing now that it matters. I don't fight the first wave the way I fought everything before it. There's no room for careful edge-walking against a flood. This is triage, not duel, cutting a path wherever the line threatens to break. Predator's eye, finding gaps in a swarm instead of a single opponent. It takes almost an hour to stabilize the outer wave. When it finally thins, the tear in the sky goes still for the length of one held breath, and then something steps through that isn't a monster in any category the association has a name for. It doesn't look like the King of Void, not exactly, though the shape carries an unmistakable echo of it, taller, more assembled than born, plating that seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. No single face, just a presence that reorients the air around it the moment it fully arrives. That's not the whole thing, Liu Na says over the comm, voice tight. Sensor readings say this is a fraction of whatever's actually behind that gate, an avatar, a hand it's willing to lose. A hand is still going to kill everyone in this plaza, Qin Dushin mutters. The avatar doesn't rush the line the way the swarm did. It moves with unhurried intent, and the first thing it does isn't attack. It reaches toward the nearest association fighter, and the man's combat skill simply stops responding. blade falling from a hand that no longer remembers how to hold it properly. It's reading them, Han Meiyan says, horrified. Reading their skills and shutting them off. It moves through the front line like that, systematically, unhurried, disarming trained fighters not with violence but with a kind of casual erasure. And the coalition that held against a flood of lesser monsters starts to buckle against something that doesn't fight so much as unmake. I understand, watching it work through 4 fighters in as many seconds, exactly why it's been hunting things like my skill for however long Liu Na's fragment of a record has existed. Every standard skill in this plaza is legible to it. Every standard skill can be read, cataloged, switched off. Mine isn't standard. It's never followed a pattern anything could predict, not even me. I need to get its attention before it works through the whole line, I say. That's not a plan, that's a suicide with extra steps, Qin says. It's the only plan where the rest of the coalition doesn't get disarmed one at a time until there's nothing left holding the perimeter. Nobody argues further because nobody has a better option, and that silence is its own kind of agreement. I close the distance the way I've closed every distance since the alley with Jiang Taishu. Not cautiously, not defensively, straight at the thing that's already dismantled 4 trained fighters without slowing its pace, and for the first time since it arrived, it turns its attention fully toward one target. It reaches for me the same way it reached for the others. I feel something press against the edges of my status window, cold and precise, trying to find the shape of body on the brink and the line that doesn't break and switch them off the way it switched off everything else. It can't. I feel the attempt fail, feel something like confusion in the pressure against my mind, because a skill that grows by breaking its own rules every time it mutates doesn't have a fixed shape for anything to read. That doesn't mean it can't still kill me. It closes the distance itself now, fast in the same held-breath way the King of Void moved months ago, and the first strike lands before I can fully process the shift in its behavior. A blow across my chest that puts me through the remains of a market stall and drops my HP into territory that makes the plaza sounds go distant and thin. Qin is there before the Avatar can press the advantage, planting himself between us despite a wound that should have kept him off his feet entirely. Taking a strike meant to finish me across his own ribs instead. It should put him down. It nearly does. He stays upright through something that looks less like strength now and more like pure refusal, matching in his own way. The exact stubbornness that's kept me alive since the clearing. Go! He grits out. I've got maybe 30 seconds of this in me. Use them. Liu Na's voice cuts through the calm, urgent. I found something. The archive fragment. Its readable patterns aren't infinite. Every skill it disarms, it has to briefly hold in its own structure to process. If enough incompatible patterns hit it at once, faster than it can catalog them, it overloads, I finish. Maybe I don't have proof. I have a theory and about 10 seconds to test it. 10 seconds is what we have. I get back to my feet on HP low enough that the world should have already ended for me twice over today, and this time, I don't wait for the edge to find me. I walk toward it. Han Meiyan reaches me before I close the final distance, and for one confusing second I think she's going to argue, going to pull me back the way every instinct in her has fought to do since the fire escape conversation 4 days ago. Instead, she grips my arm, hard, grounding rather than restraining. I'm not stopping you, she says. I'm coming with you as far as I can, because if you go past the edge this time, I want to be close enough to actually pull you back, not just hoping you find your own way. It isn't permission. It's something steadier than that. A promise that the thing she asked for on the fire escape, coming back on purpose and not just by mechanism, has someone actively holding the other end of that rope now, instead of trusting it to hold itself. I go into the final exchange with that fact sitting inside me like ballast. The Avatar meets my approach with another attempt to read my skill, and again it fails, and this time I feel something underneath the failure that might be the closest thing this ancient, patient hunger has to frustration. It's spent however long it's existed cataloging everything it's ever hunted. It has never had to fight something it can't first understand. I let it hit me, not carelessly, deliberately, taking a blow I could have avoided because the HP cost buys speed and clarity faster than caution ever has, and the line that doesn't break answers immediately this time, no lag. The accumulated weight of every mutation across this entire fight finally stacking on top of each other in a way none of them could alone. Level up. Passive skill, Predator's Eye, and passive skill, the line that doesn't break, have merged. The window doesn't finish resolving the name before my body moves on its own, faster than thought. Inside the avatar's guard on an angle it clearly didn't calculate for. Luna's voice is shouting something about the overload window, about incompatible patterns colliding inside its processing structure, and I don't fully understand the mechanism even as I feel it happening. Every mutated piece of a skill that was never supposed to amount to anything, converging on a single point of contact. The strike that finishes it isn't elegant. It's a shard of instinct and desperation and everything this skill has become since a broken piece of Chu Yinggren's blade first went through a seam that shouldn't have existed, driven now into a gap in the avatar's plating that opens for exactly the half second the overload creates. The avatar doesn't die the way a living thing dies. It comes apart, plating fracturing outward, the wrongness in the air around it collapsing inward, until there's nothing left standing where it was except settling dust and a gate tear that's already beginning to seal itself. The pressure behind it withdrawing like something enormous just decided this particular hand wasn't worth losing further. I don't stay upright for the aftermath. HP crashes past every threshold I've tested today, and the world goes dark at the edges the way it did in the very first clearing, except this time I'm not alone in it. Han Meiyan is already there, hands working before I'm fully on the ground, and I hear her voice through the closing dark, not clinical this time, not steady, scared, and refusing to let that stop her hands from doing what they need to do. Stay with me, she says. You don't get to do the mechanism's job for it. You come back because I'm asking you to, not because the skill decided to let you. I don't know, in the moment, whether I answer her. I know that somewhere in the plaza, Chindushin is still upright, barely, leaning on a wall that used to be a market stall. I know Luna's voice is still coming through a comm channel to a coalition of fighters who arrived as strangers and enemies and left the field as something closer to allies. I know the gate above the plaza is sealing, and that whatever ancient, patient thing sent an avatar to test what I've become has just learned, badly, that I'm not a skill it can catalog. The last coherent thing I hold on to before the dark takes the rest of it isn't fear. It's the plain, exhausted certainty that whatever happens next, I came back this time because 4 people refused to let the edge keep me. That's not the same thing the skill has ever given me on its own. It's better. Part 13. What doesn't evaporate. I wake up 3 days later in a real hospital bed instead of a safe house cot, which is how I know something in the world actually changed while I was unconscious. Han Meiyan is asleep in the chair beside me, still in the same clothes from the plaza, and she wakes the second I shift against the sheets. Alert in a way that tells me she hasn't been sleeping properly the whole 3 days. You're supposed to still be unconscious, she says, and it comes out somewhere between relief and reprimand. Feels like I missed something. You missed the entire city deciding it owes you an apology it doesn't fully know how to give, she says. Turns out watching a skill-devouring horror get beaten by a former F-rank changes people's opinions fast. The association's offer comes formally, 5 days after that, delivered by an administrator who isn't the same investigator who once asked me to explain my own survival like it was a confession. Full S-rank certification, retroactive to the day of the King of Void incident, public commendation. A place on the Reformed Classification Oversight Board if I want it. Liu Na's evidence, combined with what happened in the plaza, has already forced the resignation of 3 senior evaluators and a formal audit of every gate classification filed in the last 5 years. You'd have real authority, the administrator tells me. Enough to make sure what happened to your original team never happens to anyone else. I think about it longer than I expected to. Not because the offer is tempting in the way Jiang Taishu's was, there's no muzzle hidden in this one, no condition to stay quiet, but because there's a version of accepting it that would genuinely help people, and turning it down feels, for a moment, like turning down the chance to fix the exact thing that started all of this. I'll help with the audit, I say. I'll testify, I'll hand over every page of 5 years of field notes if it helps close the gaps faster. But I don't want the rank, and I don't want the board seat. May I ask why? Because the whole problem was a system that decided what a person's worth is based on a number over their head, I say. I'm not interested in becoming the exception that makes the number feel fair again. I'd rather help build something that doesn't need the number to mean what it currently means. She doesn't fully understand it, I can tell, but she doesn't argue either. Some decisions don't need to be understood to be respected. Jiang Taichu doesn't disappear from the story, though he never comes near us again personally. What's left of Tianren's leadership forces him into a supervised advisory role during the classification audit. Not exile, not punishment exactly, but the specific humiliation of a man who built an empire on other people's disposability being made to sit on the committee cleaning up the mess that empire left behind. I hear secondhand, months later, that he does the work competently, without complaint, without the composure he used to wear like armor. I don't feel triumph hearing it. I feel something closer to the quiet the plaza had right after the gates sealed. The specific stillness of something finished, not something won. The independent structure takes shape faster than any of us expect, mostly because the four of us have spent months already running something close to it without a name. Liu Na becomes its backbone. Full editorial control over an independent classification watchdog. Funded initially by a mix of commendation money none of us wanted to keep for ourselves and contributions from guilds eager to be seen doing the right thing after the scandal. She hires two of the archive clerks who helped us, Old Bo and Xiaorui, on record this time, properly paid, properly protected. Turns out being right about corruption is a marketable skill once enough people believe you, she tells me, the first week the office opens, not quite smiling but close to it. Xin Dushan takes the training side, working with low-rank awakened, who've spent years being treated as disposable the way his old probe teams were. Teaching them not just combat, but the tactical judgment that got three strangers and a fugitive through fights they should never have survived. The wound from the plaza never fully closes clean. There's a stiffness in his side that flares on cold mornings, permanent, a mark he wears without complaint. Kids ask about the scar, he tells me once, amused despite himself. I tell them it's what happens when you decide holding a line matters more than not getting hit. Han Meiyan opens a real clinic, licensed this time, no rank requirements at the door, treating anyone the old system would have turned away. F ranks, unregistered awakened, anyone the number over their head used to decide didn't matter. She still checks my ribs more often than is medically necessary. Neither of us minds. The last time I use the edge deliberately, it isn't in a fight. It's a quiet afternoon, 4 months after the plaza, and Liu Na flags a classification discrepancy on a Gate 2 districts over. Small, probably nothing. The kind of minor irregularity the old me would have needed to personally verify by walking in close to death just to be certain. I go look at the report instead. I read it the way I used to write in my old notebooks, carefully, methodically, cross-referencing 3 other sources before I decide it's an honest clerical error and not another buried threat. It takes an hour. It costs me nothing. Han Meiyan finds me afterward at the clinic going through the last of the paperwork. You didn't go in yourself, she says. It isn't quite a question. Didn't need to. Turned out to be nothing. I closed the file. There was a time I'd have gone anyway, just to be sure, just for the extra level. And now? I think about the answer honestly before I give it, because she's earned an honest one more than anyone. Now there are people who'd have to pull me back if I went too far chasing certainty I don't need, I say. That used to not matter to me. It matters now. She doesn't say anything triumphant about it. She just sits down across from me, unhurried, the way she's done 100 times since a village outside a poisoned gate. Some nights I still write in the notebooks. Different entries now. Not gate classifications, not monster patterns, but the ordinary record of a life that has room in it for ordinary things. The clinic's slow renovation, Xin Dushan's terrible jokes getting slightly less terrible with practice. Liu Na's watchdog office breaking its first real story about a guild trying the same evaluator trick in a neighboring city, caught this time before anyone dies for it. I think sometimes about the lake I read about once in an old field report. Not mine, someone else's. A passing mention in an unrelated file about a body of water that shouldn't have existed in a desert region, gone within a season, evaporated down to nothing because it never had the depth to hold itself together against the heat. I was a puddle once. 2 meters wide, in a desert, evaporating, and I knew it the whole time I was carrying someone else's bags and being called you by a captain who never learned my name. I'm not that anymore. Not because a system finally decided to measure me correctly, I turned down the number they offered, but because there's a clinic 2 blocks from here that didn't exist a year ago, and a training hall full of low ranks learning they're not disposable, and a watchdog office that's already saved lives I'll never personally know about. And none of that required a rank over anyone's head to be true. Han Meiyan finds me on the fire escape again, the same one, months later, and this time, neither of us is bracing for a fight that's still coming. What are you thinking about? She asks, sitting down the way she always does now without asking permission, because she doesn't need to anymore. That I used to think the only thing I had was a skill that grows when I'm close to dying, I say. Turns out the thing that actually grew was everything I built around it. The skill was never the point, it just bought me enough time to find that out. She doesn't say anything clever back. She just leans against my shoulder, quiet, and for a long while, neither of us needs to fill the silence with anything at all. Below us, the city keeps moving the way cities do, indifferent to any single person's rank, exactly the way it always should have been. Somewhere in it, a clinic stays open past dark for anyone who needs it. A training hall teaches people who were told they didn't count that counting was never the association's decision to make. A watchdog office keeps a light on for the next classification file that doesn't add up. I was a puddle that was supposed to evaporate. I didn't. And for the first time since the day I awakened into the lowest rank that exists, that's the whole story. No new tear opening somewhere far away. No shadow gathering on a horizon I haven't seen yet. Just a lake, still here, not because it had to fight to stay standing tonight, but because it finally had a reason to.